Hi everyone, this is Chandrasekhar Upapati, presenter of the paper Future of Extreme Weather Events, Advanced Machine Learning and Artificial Intelligence for Democratic Institution Preparedness and Enhanced National Food Security. Our paper got selected for 2022 IEEE International Conference on Big Data occurred in Osaka, Japan, 2022. Our presentation was on December 20. A household is not food secure unless it feels food secure. Food security exists when all people always have physical and economical access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. As per World Health Organization, food security has four major characteristics or drivers, that is affordability, availability, quality and safety, natural resources and resilience. The purpose of our paper was to find out the root causes for food insecurity and through data science and machine learning identify the patterns and able to forecast when a food insecurity situation could arise. Food insecurity is defined as the disruption of food intake or eating pattern because of a lack of money or other resources. The number one driver of hunger on the planet is man-made conflict. Conflict tears families apart and forces entire communities from their homes. In our research, one of the major drivers for food insecurity is conflicts, man-made conflicts. The purpose of our paper was to apply data science and machine learning to solve food insecurity issues. Currently, the world is at a critical juncture. Uh, in 2020, nearly 1 in 3 people did not have access to adequate food, as per UN report, a pandemic year marked by spike in the world hunger. Between 720 and 811 people faced hunger. Compared with 2019, 46 million more people in Africa, almost 57 million more people in Asia, and about 14 million more people Latin America and the Caribbean were affected by hunger. Based on forecast of global population growth, current deficit to feed people around the world, and increased demand for greater fuel and biodiesel, food security will remain an important economic development issue over the next several decades. This is where application of advanced data science and machine learning would not only optimize the productivities but also lift people around the world who are at the bottom of poverty line. As the graph clearly depicts for food insecurity map, 418 million people live in Asia with undernourished food conditions. 282 million people in Africa suffer food insecurity, and 60 million people in the Latin America and the Caribbean suffer from food issues. These issues need to be addressed so as to have a food for entire planet and to have a greater future food. Thank you. Coming to the United States of America, our home, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has characterized food security in three categorizations. This is as per Prevalence of Food Insecurity Average 2019 to 2021 report released by USDA. Within US, food secure households are 89.8% and around 10.2% of households are food insecure. Within the 10.2% household, the household with low food security is 6.4%, and household with very low food security is 3.8%. So as you can see on the graph, US graph, there are pockets of states within the country that has food security very high and food insecurity very high too. Now, one of the major reasons, as per our research and as per our machine learning models, detect is macroeconomics as a major player for food security ensurement or food insecurity development. Macroeconomics plays an important role in the food insecurity. Macroeconomics is the study of the major economic totals or aggregates. The three big three concepts of macroeconomics involve the study of unemployment, inflation rate, and economic growth, all of which have a direct influence on food security. As part of our research and in this presentation, we touch three major segments that has direct correlation with food security. One is economic shocks, climate shocks, and war and conflicts. Our machine learning model derives data as well as inferences from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, especially from the countries that listed under FAO emergencies and resilience framework. Another major data source that we use for learning the influence of macroeconomics on the food security, especially in our machine learning and artificial intelligence models, is a Federal Reserve economic data, also known as FRED data set. We also factor in the inflation curves as depicted by the White House graph, especially the major six episodes of inflation since 1944, and applies the trends of this inflation and the correlations to the after 2019 to 2022, the inflation trends due to COVID-19 as well as oil prices that resulted in recent times. Other major data sources that we use as part of our machine learning models include the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, container ship fleet data, and natural gas and oil prices across the national US as well as the worldwide. We also apply the insights and data signals from inflation trend curves as can be clearly seen in the graph post 2020. As well, we also look at the economic cycles as can be clearly seen in the graph, shaded areas which are representative of recessions as determined by the National Bureau of Economic Research. The climate shocks and weather patterns are other major data sources or data signals that we apply to our machine learning and artificial intelligence models. As we have seen from our research and as we have seen from the data models that we developed, the great majority of world's hunger, people are the very poor, the landless and nearly landless, and the vulnerable groups of young children, pregnant and lactating women, and the elderly. Food insecurity is a global problem and it is catastrophic for children and young women. Extreme weather events are other major data sources that our model uses to see the production shifts as well as agricultural yield shifts and then causation to food insecurity. For example, Pakistan monsoon in 2022, we have analyzed through our data models and have seen the influence of changing trends in the food production as well as agriculture supply chain across the world. We would like to clearly conclude this slide with a statement from UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Pakistan facing monsoon on steroids, climate catastrophe. Climate shocks are definitely a major impact to food insecurity. Studying them, understanding them through machine learning and artificial intelligence would help us to prepare for any future such events and thereby prevent the loss to humans, especially loss to food, so that we can balance the food security during the extreme events. Frequency and intensity of heat waves are the other extreme weather events that we would like to study and fine-tune our models. Recent heat wave in India 2022 has resulted a huge disruption in wheat yield, especially northern part of India. Climate change has made India's heat waves hotter. Earlier, human activities increased global temperatures. heat waves like in the year 2022 would have struck India once in about half a century. However, now it is a more common occurrence. We can expect such high temperatures about once every 4 years. These are the conclusions from a climate scientist at Imperial College of London. The importance of these studies, as well as the importance of learning from these events, which in future would seems to occur very frequent, would help us to not only study the agricultural production yields changes, as well the impact to the entire world population. Historical trend analysis as historical price analysis of heat waves that occur in India for last 10 years, for example, from 2014 to till date, has clearly shown a signal. The signal is during the heat waves, the price of commodity, especially the staple commodities such as wheat, increased drastically. For example, in 2014, 2015, as you can see, there is a jump in the graph. Similarly, during 2015, 2016 heat wave, still the price increased with a greater extent from rupees around 1000 to 1500 rupees for wheat per kg. Similarly, heat waves 2018 to 2019, we would see in the graph a spear wheat prices crossed 2000 rupees per kg, and similarly the heat waves in 2019 and 2020. So the signal, especially the correlation between heat waves as well as the price as determined by National Commodity and Derivative Exchange Limited, a government organization, it shows heat waves are influencers to increase in the prices. Heat wave yield loss could feed recent heat waves that in 2022. Our analysis clearly shows heat wave yield loss, that is yield loss of basic agriculture product, in this case wheat, could feed 49.7 millions in the year for a year, assuming each person takes 180 pounds or 81.6 kgs of wheat per person. So what this clearly tells is, right, when heat wave occurs, there occurs a shock to global supply chain of the staple commodities like wheat that correlates with higher prices, and that results in food insecurity across the world. Beyond India, other countries also grappling with poor harvest that hinder their ability to help offset the potential shortfall of supplies from Russia and Ukraine, normally the world's largest and fifth largest exporter of wheat. Combination of these extreme weather events as well as the conflicts have made the world most vulnerable, and as a humanity, we are at a critical juncture. Drought events are other major food insecurity causation events. For example, take the example of the U.S. Drought Monitor, October 4, 2022, the drought in the Kansas, which is wheat state or breadbasket for the entire world. Historical analysis of drought years versus yield losses, wheat yield losses, that is bushels per acre, for Kansas 1982 to 2020, clearly shows a signal. During the drought years, the yield per acre drops drastically for the state of Kansas. Based on May 1 conditions, Kansas 2022 winter wheat crop is forecast at 271 million per bushels, down 26% from last year's crop, according to the USDA's National Agricultural Statistics Services. Average yield is forecast at 39 bushels per acre, down 13 bushels from last year. Acres to be harvested for grain is estimated at 6.95 million acres, down 50,000 acres from last year. This would be 94% of planted acres, below last year's 96% of harvested acres. So what does this resulted, right? This resulted a opportunity cost conundrum for the farmers of Kansas. One side we have higher inflation rates, that is, during 2022 the basic commodity of food prices are very high. On the other hand, we are depleting the yield losses due to drought. So as a result of extreme weather and drought, at least half of the wheat fields in the western Kansas won't produce enough for farmers to break even. We are losing money even with highest price of wheat that we have probably seen in the past 50 or 100 years, as per a statement from farmers, Kansas wheat farmers. It is important to study the influence of extreme weather events, drought, as well as the heat waves on the agricultural productions of basic commodities. As per National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration (NOAA), changes in ozone layer, greenhouse gases, and climate change affect agricultural producers significantly, as agriculture and fisheries depends on specific climate conditions. Temperature changes can cause habitat ranges and crop planting dates to shift. This influences large-scale farmers as well as large-scale agriculture producers as well as small-size farmers who depends on agriculture across the world. As per the influence of the extreme weathers, a recent statement by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, we are on a highway to climate hell with our foot on the accelerator. So this statement from the Secretary General clearly underscores the importance of studying the climate, importance of influence of climate on agriculture production, as well as the importance of how to prepare for the future. This is where our data science machine learning will come to, and helps to understand the signals that correlates with these events. As indicated prior, wars, conflicts are major drivers of food insecurity. For our machine learning models, we have considered the post impact of conflicts and how it influenced the food supply chains across the world. In order to study, for instance, the war in Ukraine, we apply unsupervised data science techniques, for example, clustering techniques, to see the influence of the shortage of the food results from Russia-Ukraine war. Russian-Ukraine shares in a global cereals, as you can see, wheat, corn, and coarse grains. And right side, you can see the amount of the Russian-Ukraine shares of global sunflower seed and oil exports 2020. With the war, we applied a again with the war we apply a unsupervised technique, that is a clustering method, to see the what if effect, or to see the impact of the taking out the productions from these two countries and what is the net impact to the worldwide agriculture supply chain. This would give us a clear indicator the strength of food insecurity due to the conflicts in the war. Solutions to food insecurity, again, as we've seen, both the macroeconomic models as well as the climate models clearly indicate the influence of extreme weathers, wars on food supply chain, as well as increase in food insecurity. In our view, humanity is at a critical juncture, and what this unprecedented moment in our lives has thrusted upon us, the practitioners of agriculture and technologies of the world, is to innovate and become more productive to address the multi-pronged food security challenges. This is where our research as well as our products basically solely aim apply data, silicon, software, algorithms, and economics to solve and to enhance the food security across the world. We believe machine learning and data science would help us to understand the patterns of the changing economic behaviors as well as changing parameters that could result into yield losses and thereby results into higher food insecurity. We would like to prevent it by looking at in the future through our machine learning models, forecasting models, as well as data science models to help governments across the world to prepare in advance if prepare in advance to avoid any food security challenges to the national populace. To solve food security, to enhance the food security, and to solve the food insecurities issues, we have applied data sources across three major segments. On economic data sources, we have used the standard, very well-known data sources that include FAO, that is United Nations Food and Agriculture Organizations, the US Labor Statistics, the United States Department of Agriculture, FRED data sources. We use IMF, International Monetary Fund data sources. We use the World Bank data sources. We use World Trade Organization data sources. Additionally, we have used USAID and S&P Global Ratings to influence the macroeconomic shifts on the food security. We also consider the data sources, national data sources, for example, Economic Statistics of India, Reserve Bank of India, the data sources. As well, we also looked at the data sources which are national commodity and derivative exchange data sources for the economic purposes. For weather related, we have used NASA, NOAA data sources, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration data sources. We have used EIA energy data sources. We also use US.gov. We used World Food Program data sources. Additionally, we have used Food and Agriculture Organization of the United States. We use OECD, and plus we use IPCC as well as the SDG, which is Sustainable Development Goals, all as a data sources. Finally, we have utilized the data sources from field-generated sensors. In our case, our sensors, we manufacture class 10 sensors that enables the activity of the dairy data sets, and we apply these data sets as part of our machine learning model. Additionally, we have used data sources from satellites. For example, we take data sources that satellite generates on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. Our satellite data sets include EcoStress as well as NOAA VIRS, plus the satellite data available at national level, for example, ISRO and others, and European satellite data sets. Our machine learning and artificial intelligence models, by using economic data as well as macroeconomic data, climate data, weather parameters data, have developed a causation models that links the input parameters to the outcomes that predicts food security, income and welfare, government insights based on the data set. Now, our models approach would be a tiered approach, that is based on the input data. We look at the causation factors that includes trade, liberalization, other reforms, external shocks parameters, and then develop an intermediate effects that could predict prices, quantities, trade volume changes, which basically helps to predict the outcomes that are based on the food security as well as income and welfare government policies. What we learned by applying over 30 years data of economic as well as agriculture yield productions, we learned when women have an income, they dedicate 90% of their health, education to food security, to the children, to the family, or to the community. So when women have an income, everybody wins. This is the statement from Michelle, from the United Nations Commissioner on Human Rights. In our machine learning models also, we see a heavy influence of women in agriculture employment that takes care of the commodities as well as production at the grassroots level. So in essence, right, when women have income, we all make a better world for everyone. We have codified the machine learning models, macroeconomics data, as well as yield data in our models that deployed on our sensors. So we have a sensor that enables the food productivity at the grassroots level. We have class 10 diagnostic sensor for animal husbandry. Our CownXX sensors uses the machine learning data that we learned with last 30 years worth of data and are able to predict the productivity as well as the climate shocks to the farmers. In order to develop insights from the data, right, we applied advanced time series and machine learning models. We have used autoregressive models, vector autoregressive models. We used a profit model, and we also used advanced auto machine learning models from the third-party vendors. Now, our basic algorithm is pretty simple, as depicted in the diagram, right? What we do is, right, we take input data parameters, check for the exploratory data analysis. Basically, that involves looking at the data set, looking the statistical properties of the data, analyze the quantitative values for numerical items, evaluate feature variables for the data distribution. That's item 4. Secondly, we check for the stationarity of the data. This is where we apply Gaussian principles to find out whether the input time series data is normalized or stable or stationary. Otherwise, we'll shift the data with respect to the time frequency till we achieve the independent data variable is stable or not. The stability for the time series is required to make sure that learning is applicable across the time series that we are looking at. Once we have identified the stability of the data, then what we will do is, right, we'll start performing autocorrelation function that basically describes is there any correlation between predictor variable versus independent variables. Then we'll perform, after autocorrelation successfully, we will do a Granger causation models that basically explains whether the independent variables in any way or form or shape influences the dependent variable, that is the predictor variable. Finally, we'll prepare the model that we offer upon satisfaction of all the data policies as well as data requirements. We'll prepare the time series model that trains the data and creates a predictive time series feature variable. What we will do is, right, once the model is available, we test the model against the features and then validate basically with the field data to make sure our models are representative of what's happening. This is a template of our time series model. We give data input data, which is data densities, as well as containing the different data densities, and then we perform the validation of time series, that is checking for the stationarity, checking for the causation models, and then after that we'll create the time series model, and that includes vector autoregressive model, profit model. These are the latest time series models we'll apply. And then finally, right, the output data, we verify the time series model for forecasting purposes. The case studies of our presentation include as follows. One is we verified the rice production in Thailand, coffee production in Vietnam with basic commodities, cashew production, which is specialty crop in Mozambique, and then finally sugar production in Australia. We applied our machine learning and AI models across all these 4 countries with the 4 different agriculture productions. In addition to data sets, right, we also applied as part of our machine learning model a common pattern which is applicable to climate science. SSPs we call shared socio-economic pathways. We prepared our models as well as we validated the models and predicted the outcomes of these models under different SSP conditions. Now, SSP, our models are basically SSP1, which is a sustainability model, SSP2, middle of the road model, SSP5, which is life as usual, the model that basically emphasizes on rapid economic growth and low regard for global environment and SDGs, and then finally technology fixes low population and high mobility. So we validated our models against all the SSPs, and based on that we codified what future would look like if we are in SSP5 versus SSP2, which basically takes care of development patterns that's predictable, slow progress of global and national institutions, moderate global population growth. So we applied the climate models against all 5 SSPs for the 4 countries that we mentioned. The need for SSPs are pretty important, as you can see in the graph, right? Each SSP model, shared socioeconomic pathway models, have different influence factors with respect to the climate parameters that we are looking at. For example, in this case, CMIP6, which is a coupled model intercomparison project, which is a global climate change project, basically looks at the annual global average temperatures between years 1850 to 2100, that is end of the century. Now, if you look at it, right, the historical patterns for global average temperatures till current years, which is 2022, you can see the trend pretty constantly increasing. Now, if you apply different SSPs, that is, if you look at SSPs 5, which is more focused towards economic development and less regard for climate change, climate science, then there will be rapid increase of the temperature from 2200 to 2022-23 onwards, 2100. There will be drastic increase of the temperature. Now, if the same projection model change to SSP2, which is middle of the road, where we want to preserve the global climate and then we want to improve, then the blue curve, which is SSP2, tend to be much more in line with the expected global climate change. Similarly, SSP1, there's a drop in the temperature. So the importance of SSP models overlaying on the climate machine learning models in our AI and machine learning would provide us what will be the future of the economic production for these countries applying climate science. For developing machine learning model for the rice production in Thailand, we have used several rice yield production values for Thailand, especially the major paddy production area, Nakhon Sawan region of the Thailand. We collected the temperatures for the region, as well as we collected the rice yield, as well as area harvested, rice production, and then finally gross production value with respect to the financial earnings for the rice. And also finally we collected the climate data, which is same IP6 for SSP1, 3, and 5 as part of the development of machine learning. In addition to the data parameters, we also collected agricultural calendar for Thailand, for the region of Nakhon Sawan, for the rice production. So the main season as well as secondary season, we collected the rice agriculture calendar for the time periods of sowing, growing, and harvesting region. In this case, right, you can see the rice production. Generally, the sowing pattern for the main season starts somewhere May and goes up to the August, and then growing season is between September, and then finally the harvesting season October, November, December. And the secondary season, which is the winter crop, starts from January through March is the sowing season, growing season March, April, and then harvesting season, that is from April to June end. Yeah. In addition to the parameters, yield parameters, we also collected agricultural calendar for the rice production Thailand. We have for the region Nakhon Sawan, We have analyzed two major agriculture crop calendars. Main calendar, which starts from sowing season, March, and lasts till August, and then growing season, which is in September, and then finally harvesting season starts end of September or beginning of October through December and January. And then secondary season, which starts from January as a sowing season and goes up to middle of the March, and then growing season March through April middle, and then harvesting season, which April middle to goes up to June. Uh, we used this data and feed the machine learning models to understand the agriculture crop calendars as part of the model. Application of data science on the model basically summarizes the what would be the yield as well as production outcomes during the end of century, which is 2099 or 2100 year. As it can be seen clearly, right? The if climate goes as is, that is business as usual, which is SSP5, we tend to see a huge drop by end of the century, which would be a 35% drop for whatever the levels of production as of today. So one of the adaptation strategies would be either we need to include rice seeds that are that can withstand climate change, or to move from Nakansavan to other areas which tend to be lesser impacted by climate. That's what our model finds as part of the impact of climate change as part of the rice production. Next use case, Vietnam coffee production. We applied Vietnam coffee production for the region of Gia, which is one of the major coffee producing centers in Vietnam. This region also produces 70% of country's fruits, more than 60% of country's seafood exports. The region has recently faced the most severe periods of drought and saline water intrusion in the last 100 years, notably 2015, 2016, and even more devastatingly in 2019 and 2020. So that is the backdrop for which we want to see what will be the impact of climate change on Vietnam coffee production. Here's the region of the Vietnam coffee production area that we focused on, Gia. As the political map of Vietnam indicates, the region highlighted with the dark green is the area we applied machine learning model. The coffee yield curves for the region Gia from 1960s to 2020, as you can see, both area harvested yield curve, coffee production yield curve, and coffee yield curve all are upward trending, with area harvested being increasing, so as coffee yield also increasing over the period of time. However, there are peaks and valleys with coffee yield, which is indicated in the green line, whereas area harvested as well as coffee production also have the peaks and valleys. What our machine learning models learned was coffee production in Vietnam, especially the region of Gia, positively correlated with area harvested. That is, increase in area harvested results in increased coffee production. Similarly, negatively correlated with temperatures June, as indicated in the mathematical equation, temperatures in June, as well negatively correlated with temperature in August, November. These are the temperatures in which higher the temperatures results in lower the coffee production yield. Now also the temperatures in June, temperatures in July, my apologies, temperatures in July, September, and temperatures in as well in lower in October have positively correlated. Same applies to mean temperatures as well as precipitation in the region. Our climate models predicts based on the SSPs that we ran. We tend to see initially there will be a drop in the coffee production as predicted by the machine learning models for the time periods of 2020 as well as to 2040 to 2059. And SSP5, which is business as usual models, would see a positive coffee production in 2060 to 2079 time period, as well as 2080 to 2099 time period, where the orange graphs have positive correlation from the climate science point of view. And all other SSPs, again SSP5, SSP1, SSP3, would have initially a reduction in production, subsequently picks up at the end of the century. Next use case, we applied our ML models to Mozambique cashew production. Cashews are specialty crops. They are high value crops. They have historically what we've seen in the Mozambique and other areas where cashews are produced, they uplift the farmers and basically from the below poverty line to make them self-sustained, cash rich, and improves the quality as well as the social lifestyle of a farmers. It's one of the important crop that alleviates poverty and improves social well-being. As part of our machine learning model, we applied Mozambique Namapola data, collected Mozambique Namapola data. We collected agriculture yield, cashew production. We also collected the agriculture calendar for the Namapola, as well as we collected climate data, and then we collected satellite data that includes Food and Agriculture Institute's global information early warning system that provides the parameters related to climate data over the period of year for the country Mozambique Namapola. Additional weather parameters we collected that includes NOAA Star, which is for Satellite Application and Research Center for Satellite Application and Research Data, that includes the daily that includes variations of Vegetation Health Index as well as Vegetation Temperature Index for years between 1990 to 2021. This is the data time frame in which we developed our machine learning model. We applied a mathematical modeling that includes regressive line modeling for average vegetarian health index for Namapola from 1990 onwards to current year, which is 2021, and identified the variations of trends of vegetation health index over the period of time using satellite data. So finally, we collected agriculture crop calendar for the years for the fiscal year for Mozambique, Namapola, from the global information early warning system, and mapped the changes in weather pattern on growing stages of cashew as part of our model analysis. In order to understand the data time series signals as well as understanding the effects of weather, climate over the period of 1990 to 2021, we applied the time series model and collected average time series impact from the month January to December, as well as other parameters include precipitation values, mean temperature values, and average temperature values to study the impact of climate on the productions of cashews in Mozambique, Namapola. What we identified through the machine learning process was the cashew production in Mozambique, Namapola varies based on several parameters. One, it's highly positively correlated with area harvested. That is, more number of Mozambique cashew trees would definitely result in higher production outcomes. Similarly, we identified the months and temperatures as well as precipitation that are positively correlated with the production of the cashews, and as well as the temperatures and precipitation of the months which are negatively correlated. For example, in this case, December precipitation negatively impacts the production of the cashews as the rain in the late production stage would basically decreases the production amount because of the drop of cashew crop. Similarly, we also observed the positive March precipitation. This is the time when crop is yet to start. Any initial precipitation would possibly improve the production of the cashews for the Namapula, Mozambique. As analysis, when we apply different SSP models on cashew productions within Namapula, one positive outcome is from here 2020 to 2100, there is a positive increase of production of cashews at the end of the century. So what does it tells us is the model clearly says the whichever the SSP model we apply, by end of the year 2100, there will be an increase in production of cashews in Mozambique, Namapula, and climate change, that SSP5, SSP1, SSP3 would positively correlated with increase in number of increase in production quantity of cashews. Final use case, we applied our machine learning artificial intelligence model for sugarcane production in Australia. We are applied in the region of Queensland. Approximately 95% of sugar produced in Australia is grown in Queensland. Around 85% of the raw sugar produced in Queensland is exported and generates approximately over 2 billion export earnings for Australia agriculture. So our model analysis is applied for Queensland for machine learning and AI model. As part of our model, we first took sugarcane calendar for the Australia. From January to December, we identified the planting and harvesting season for the region of Australia. And also, we overlaid the calendar year with respect to phenological states of sugarcane, which is basically grown all over the year within Australia, Queensland, which requires various input temperatures as well as the precipitations for each phenological state, as we can see on the left side of the graph. Second, what we did was we analyzed the extreme climate events for Queensland, Australia. We took the past drought years from almost 30 years. Also, we took extreme weather events like temperature for Queensland and mapped over the agriculture production yields for the region to identify the impact of weather changes on the production of sugarcane in Australia. Next, we collected FAO, which is Food and Agriculture Organization of United Nations, GIEWS data, which is basically Global Information Early Warning System, GIE, Global Information Early Warning System data over the period of Queensland for the last 30 years to see the early impact or early patterns of climate on the historical age for Queensland, Australia. What our models derived was for all SSP conditions, we were seeing a drop in sugarcane production for the century 2100. It is no wonder that sugarcane, which takes a year to produce, we're highly susceptible to climate change. Any SSP model we take, we were tending to see the drop in the production for year 2100. This is what our model predicts, and this is also confirmed from the field research from the other machine learning model papers that were predicting the similar results. Finally, in conclusion, right, climate data science and machine learning are a new innovative way to look at the agriculture from the influence of climate change, yield, macroeconomics, and other parameters that have a huge influence on the food security. Our models gives a confidence from learning from the historical data and able to predict the future food security episodes if there are given the parameter changes in macroeconomics, climate, and other parameters. We have published a book as part of our findings, which is Artificial Intelligence and Heuristics for Enhanced Food Security, Springer publication, as well as Agriculture Economics for the Springer publications. Thank you all for your time for the conference. We appreciate this time, and we thank you for the Osaka, Japan conference for inviting us and accepting us our paper and inviting us to present. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.